When Shaquille O'Neal walked through the glass door of Iron South Fitness at 5:47 on a Wednesday morning in January, the gym smelled like rubber flooring and iron, and the particular staleness of air that has been recycled through effort for years. The fluorescent lights were still warming up, that pale flicker of the first 20 minutes before they committed to full brightness. Most of the machines were empty. A woman on the far treadmill had been running since before he arrived, her pace steady, her eyes forward. The kind of runner who has been running the same distance for so long she no longer needs to think about it. The free weights section in the back was occupied by one man, early 20s, doing curls in the mirror with the focused self-consciousness of someone who is aware of being watched, even when nobody is watching. It was a Wednesday. It was January. It was not yet 6 in the morning. Shaq was wearing black compression shorts, a plain gray t-shirt 2 sizes past large, and worn white training shoes with a crease across the toe from years of use. No headphones, no trainer, no entourage waiting by the door. He signed in at the front desk under his holding company's membership account. The name on the form was SHA Holdings LLC, which meant nothing to the teenager at the desk who scanned it without looking up. And he walked toward the weight floor. That is when he noticed the first thing. The cable machine in the corner had a placard on it, "Out of order," written in marker on a piece of torn cardboard, taped unevenly to the handle. Not a printed sign, not a proper maintenance tag. Cardboard. He looked at the date written in the corner of the placard. It said November. This was January. The machine had been out of order for at least 2 months, and nobody had fixed it or replaced the sign with something professional. He filed it away, said nothing. He moved to the free weights section and selected a pair of 45-pound dumbbells from the rack. He carried them to a bench, sat down, and began his warm-up set. He noticed the second thing while he was on his third rep, a clipboard hanging from a hook on the column beside the trainer's station, a sheet on top with client names and session times, and 3 of the sessions listed for that morning had a small check mark beside them marked "Completed" at 5:47 in the morning, before the gym had been fully open. He looked at the sheet for 2 seconds, kept lifting, said nothing. The third thing was on the wall behind the trainer's station. A framed certification from the National Academy of Sports Medicine, the name on it reading Brandon Cole, Certified Personal Trainer, and below it, slightly off-center, a second frame holding a printed quote that said, "Champions are made here." The frame was dusty on the top edge. He noticed. He said nothing. Nobody in that gym knew what Shaquille O'Neal knew that Wednesday morning. He had been carrying it for 11 weeks. 11 weeks since the regional operations team for his fitness franchise portfolio had flagged Iron South Miami as a concern in the quarterly review. Client retention down 19%, membership complaints up, 2 staff departures without formal exit interviews, and a pattern in the billing system that the operations director had described in the email she sent on a Tuesday night at 11:43 as something we need eyes on before we decide what it means. SHA Holdings owned 14 Iron South locations across Florida and Georgia. He had acquired the chain 3 years ago when it was 6 locations and losing money in ways that were fixable. He had fixed them. 13 of the 14 were running well. 1 was not. He had learned 20 years ago that the difference between a business problem and a people problem is usually that there is a person in the middle of it, and the fastest way to understand that person is to walk into the room they are in charge of before they know you are coming. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, had told him something once that had become the closest thing he had to a management philosophy. The weight doesn't care who you are. Show up anyway. He had been showing up anyway for 30 years. Now, trust us, you are not going to see this ending coming. Stay with the whole video. because what happens on that weight floor over the next 40 minutes is not what Brandon Cole was expecting, not what the young woman at the front desk was expecting, and not remotely what the members who were about to walk through that door at 6 in the morning had any reason to anticipate. Shaquille O'Neal grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and then in various Army-based towns across the country as his stepfather Philip moved assignments. Newark first, then Wildflower, then a base town in Georgia, where the summers were long and the facilities were sparse, and Shaq spent most of his free time in the base gym because it was air-conditioned, and because the weights were there, and because Philip had told him that the weight doesn't care who you are, and show up anyway. Philip Harrison was not a large man. He was 5'11" and built like someone who had been efficient about everything his entire life, including his body. He pressed his uniform every morning. He made his bed with corners that could support a quarter drop. He held Shaq to a standard that had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with whether you did the thing you said you were going to do. At the time you said you were going to do it, in the manner you said you were going to do it, every time. Shaq was not always grateful for this in the years it was happening. He became progressively more grateful for it in every year that followed. Philip Harrison died in 2013. He was found in the morning, the way men like him are often found, already dressed, coffee made, the day begun before it ended. He had told Shaq, the last time they talked, that the measure of a man is not what he does when people are watching. It is what he does at 5:47 in the morning in an empty gym when nobody knows his name. Brandon Cole arrived at Iron South at 6:03. He was 34 years old. He walked through the door the way people walk through doors they have decided belong to them. Not loudly, but with the particular authority of someone who has held a room long enough to stop noticing that holding it takes effort. He was lean, tanned, with the precise musculature of someone who spends a significant portion of each day constructing evidence of their own expertise. He had been the head trainer at Iron South Miami for 4 years. Before that, he had moved through 3 other gyms in 18 months, always on good terms on paper, always with a reference from a manager who was relieved to see him go. He was good with clients who needed encouragement. He was less good with clients who were better than him. And he was worst of all with clients he felt threatened by, which was a category he had been quietly expanding for 4 years without fully acknowledging that it existed. For the past 6 months, Brandon had been billing the system for sessions he had not conducted. Not many. Enough. 12 clients across the period, sessions marked complete, payment processed, trainer notes filed, and Brandon elsewhere. It had started with one session he genuinely forgot and was too embarrassed to admit missing, so he filed it anyway. Then it happened again. Then it became a practice. He had not thought of it as fraud. He had thought of it as catching up, which is a thing people tell themselves in the space between what something is and what they need it to be. The regional audit was scheduled for February. He had been told it was routine. He had been told by his district contact, a man named Perry, that as long as the numbers looked clean on paper, nobody was going to look very hard at the paper. Perry had been saying this for 6 months. Perry had not yet told him that the numbers no longer looked clean on paper. Perry had not told him this because Perry had only found out himself on Monday, when the operations director's report landed in his inbox, and he was still deciding what to do about it. At 6:08, Brandon spotted the large man on the flat bench in the free weights section. He looked at him the way trainers look at members they don't recognize. A brief assessment, head to toe, the kind that takes less than 3 seconds and arrives at a conclusion the brain had already drafted before the eyes finished moving. He saw the gray t-shirt. He saw the 45s. He saw the worn shoes. He walked to the trainer's station, picked up his clipboard, and walked onto the floor. By this point, the gym had filled to 11 members. A woman named Greta Simmons 61 years old, retired occupational therapist, had taken the rowing machine to Shaq's left. She came every Wednesday and Friday at 6 and had been coming for 2 years and knew the rhythm of this floor better than most of the staff. A young man named Terrell, who worked overnight at a hospital down the street and came to the gym before sleeping, had taken the bench press 2 stations over. He was 24 and had been a member for 3 months and was still at the stage where everything about the gym felt slightly unfamiliar and slightly important. Brandon crossed the floor. He stopped 4 feet from Shaq's bench. He looked at the 45-pound dumbbells. He looked at Shaq's form. He tilted his head slightly, the way a person tilts their head when they are performing consideration they have already completed. "Hey," he said, loudly enough that it carried. "You're going to want to drop the weight." Shaq completed his rep, set the weights down, looked up. "Your form is breaking down on the eccentric," Brandon said. He was using his floor voice, the one calibrated for the room, for the audience, for the specific register of public correction that sounds like instruction but functions as something else. "You're compensating through the shoulder. You go up with that weight, you're going to hurt yourself." He paused. "Might want to start with the 20s. Get the form right first. Size doesn't always translate to strength," he said the last sentence with a small smile, the kind that is designed to look collegial and lands differently. The gym went quieter, not all the way, just enough. Greta Simmons stopped rowing. Terrell looked up from the bench press. Shaq looked at Brandon Cole for a moment. The specific kind of moment that does not contain anger and does not contain embarrassment and contains something considerably more patient than both. Then he stood up. He walked to the cable weight stack at the back of the free weights section. The standing unit. The one with the full rack, not the broken one with the cardboard sign. He looked at the stack. The full stack was 350 pounds. He looked at it the way a man looks at a thing he has looked at many times. He reached up and moved the pin, all the way to the bottom. He stepped back, took the bar, and lifted the entire stack. Clean, controlled. 12 repetitions. The kind of 12 that do not rush the last 4, because the last 4 are where the work actually happens. He set it down. He turned around. Brandon Cole had not moved. His clipboard was at his side. His face was doing something complicated. "You have been waiting for what comes next. Here it is." Shaq walked back to his bench. He picked up the 45s. He looked at Brandon. "I appreciate the coaching," he said, quietly, without sarcasm. "Sit down for a minute when you get a chance. I want to talk to you about this gym." He said it the way his stepfather used to say things, without decoration, without theater, with the specific weight of a sentence that means exactly what it says. Brandon sat down 3 minutes later, on the bench across from him, with the expression of a man who has begun to understand that something is happening that he does not have full information about, and that the information, when it arrives, is not going to improve his afternoon. "SHA Holdings," Shaq said. "You've seen that on membership accounts." Brandon's expression finished its journey. "We own this location," Shaq said. "All 14. I'm here because the operations numbers told me I needed to be, and the operations numbers were right." He paused. "The cable machine in the corner has been down since November. The session completions logged before 6 this morning are for clients who weren't here. I know what that means, and I think you know I know." He let that sit. "Here's what happens next. You're going to sit with our regional director this week. You're going to tell her everything, not a version of it, everything. What gets fixed can get fixed. What gets hidden becomes something else." He looked at Brandon steadily. "You've been here 4 years. You know this floor. That's real, and I'm not throwing it out. But some things are going to change, and the first thing that changes is the part where you make a member feel small so you feel larger. That stops today." Brandon Cole said nothing for a moment. Then he nodded. Once. The kind of nod that is an entire sentence. Terrell, at the bench press 2 stations over, had not gone back to his set. He was 24 years old and 3 months into a gym membership, and he had come here this morning because the hospital overnight was hard, and the weights were one of the few things that made him feel like something was in his control. He had watched the large man in the gray shirt get mocked and say nothing, and lift everything, and then sit down and say exactly what needed to be said without raising his voice once. He did not know who the man was. He looked it up when he got home. He came back Friday. He came back the following Wednesday. He kept coming back. Greta Simmons finished her rowing session at 6:41 and wiped down the machine and collected her towel and walked past the front desk on her way out. The teenager at the desk asked how her session was. She said, "Better than usual." She did not explain further. She had been coming to this gym for 2 years, and she had never seen anyone handle a room the way that man had handled it, and she had seen a great many rooms handled in 61 years, and she believed in giving credit where it was accurate. It had been accurate this morning. The cable machine was repaired and back in service by the following Tuesday. A proper maintenance tag, printed, laminated, was mounted beside it. The session billing discrepancies were reviewed and resolved, and 3 affected clients received account credits and a personal call from the regional director. Brandon Cole stayed. He completed a corrective performance agreement and a recertification course and showed up every morning at 6 and became, over the following months, a different version of the trainer he had always claimed to be. Not because he had been threatened into it, but because something that morning had made him see what he actually looked like from the outside, and he found that he did not prefer it. The framed certification on the wall stayed. The dusty top edge was cleaned. What Shaquille O'Neal did that Wednesday morning had nothing to do with the weight. It had everything to do with a man who learned before he was old enough to shave that the weight doesn't care who you are, and that showing up anyway at 5:47 in the morning in a plain gray shirt under flickering lights before anyone knows your name is the whole thing. Not the arrival, not the reveal. The showing up. Philip Harrison had been right. He was usually right. The weight doesn't care who you are. Show up anyway. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And tell us about a time you let your work speak when your words would have been easier. If this one landed the way we think it did, hit that like button, because this story deserves to go further than our subscribers. We are building something here, a community of people who know that the real lift happens before anyone is watching. And if that's you, subscribe and come be part of it. The next video is already waiting. We will see you there.